Hello and welcome back to the Neil Rennie Coaching Podcast even. Today I've got somebody that I've listened to, looked up to for quite a while. So it is a real privilege to have Sarah Parker on. Now she's a competitor, just wrapped up her season. She's an online coach. She's got a phenomenal podcast called Beyond Condition. So please go and check that out if you haven't already. And she is also a judge, and I believe you judged me at one of my shows and you gave me first place, but I did pay you 50 quid. But Sarah, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. How have you been post-show?
First of all, thank you for inviting me, Neil. It's always nice when I meet people who listen to the pod, and especially because it was on the stage. You were like, I listened to your podcast, and it was super cool. Because it, like with you, with doing a podcast, we do it for the passion of the sport and helping others. So it's really nice to give back. And in answer to your question, I'm not too bad, but still feeling pretty battered from quite a long, hard prep. Probably the hardest prep I've ever done, to be fair.
How did the season go for you? If you want to just sort of tell some of the listeners just how, kind of a bit about your background, but also just summarising, I suppose, this season for you.
Yeah, for sure. So this year I started with a new coach in January, so it was going to be quite a different prep anyway, because as you know from coaching yourself, it can take a while to get to know someone's body, how they react and how they respond. So it was going to be different, and it definitely was also going down the assisted route this time. I'd say it was hard in the respect of I pushed a lot harder than I have before in regards to getting my body weight right down. And also when you're going down the assisted route, there's so much more to think about. So it was, yeah, really good for my own learning as well, and just to be exposed to different things. So I went into two bros as well, which was the first time for me. And that in itself, I was always like, I don't know if I could ever do two bros, because it seems like almost like the elite.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very different vibe to probably the competitions you've done yourself and that I've done myself as well. And then I did FitX, which I came fourth at the regional and then came fifth at the final. So I was happy because I brought an improved physique myself. Although that wasn't awarded with accolades, as it were. It's always a gamble with bodybuilding. You never ever know because it's so subjective.
I think that was one of your posts actually that I'd seen, was talking about like how it was your best package, and yet obviously it wasn't rewarded the same way potentially it was in the past. How did you sort of feel around that? Did you expect to go and maybe place first, second, third?
Yeah, it's always quite a strange feeling. 2019, I had a very successful season. It was something I didn't expect, and the whole season it just kept getting better and better and better, ending with winning Miss Universe. And it was like, how the hell have I won Miss Universe? And then to go back into competing, because it'd be very easy to go, okay, so I've got the accolades, I can stop here because how can I beat that? But for me, I always look for discomfort, especially through bodybuilding. So because I can now look and see it's improved physique for myself, I'm definitely in this sport for my own, progression and being able to develop my physique. So it's okay. But if you'd asked me this when I hadn't placed before having my successful season, like it used to really, really hit. Like post show was very, very dark place for me every time. And, like self-restriction and overtraining, all of these types of things, it riddled me for quite a few seasons when I wasn't placing. So luckily with the experience, I feel better about it now.
Do you think that is what it's really come down to? Is how you've managing this post-show period is just experience is the difference? Or is it because that you feel like this was your absolute best you could have brought?
I would say probably a mixture of the two, but mainly the experience, because after a show, you always get a dump of feelings, thoughts, and it doesn't matter whether you win or whether you don't place, you still get some feelings off the back of a show. You're always going to critique your own performance, you want to see where you can improve, etc. But now I just feel like for me, show day is there to be enjoyed and make memories, and whatever comes off the back of that is like a cherry on top, rather than it being that one defining thing that I aim for.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really is coming down to like, what is your why within bodybuilding? Again, it's something that I've heard you speak about, is why I brought it up. And it's something I try and push to my clients is like, you don't really know who's going to come on that show. You can only be your absolute best, but what is the reason why you're doing bodybuilding? Like what would you say your why is?
I initially got into bodybuilding from being, I guess, my childhood and I guess early adulthood as well, was quite a hard space for me. Like there was a lot of traumatic things that happened. And then when I got into sort of mid 20s, I was like, oh, I'll go and watch a bodybuilding show. And then I saw it and I thought, oh my God, this is so cool. Like everyone tanned up, muscles. And I was like, I can never do something like that. And then my friend was like, that could be you next year. And I was like, fuck off. And then the seed was sown. And then I really, really applied myself because, of course, you can control it. And I think because my childhood and adulthood hadn't been under my control, like a lot of things came my way that I had no control over. Suddenly it was like this neuroticism for tracking food, training, everything that goes into it. And it gave me a purpose. And it wasn't until recently getting divorced last year and finding a new relationship that I realized that it helped save me because I found something to pour energies in, but I was able to save myself through that discipline. So it's a very different reason for me now. I do it because I really enjoy it and the challenges, but before it was, I didn't realize, but it was saving me from the unhappiness that I was feeling.
I appreciate your honesty there. And I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people maybe initially start in bodybuilding, you know, again, even my own experience was it's kind of a way of managing issues or potentially, well, I can put energy towards that and it kind of puts that in the back burner. But I think with most people, I'd hope anyways, the more that they go through bodybuilding, they actually fall in love with the sport and the change of it, then they can embrace it. But I find a lot of people do initially go in for, I don't even want to say the wrong reasons because it's maybe the right reasons at a tough time. But I think the more you develop as a person, mature, you need to switch that focus to doing it solely for yourself. Otherwise, it's kind of an unwinnable battle. You know, and especially like these post-show periods, as you say, like they can be like extremely dark times. You know, I'm 6 weeks post-show now. And again, probably just from experience of competing in the past, this has been the easiest one, but by no means is it easy. What do you see as the biggest challenges really post-show? Because there is a lot of people just finishing up now.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of people that I speak with that are finding this period really, really tough. Like, I guess it still surprises me in some aspects as regards to, you know, if you've got a coach and hopefully you've got a bit of a plan in place post show, but you know, a lot of people can't follow a plan. They've been neurotic for 6, 8, 10 months. And then the moment the show is out the way, they just can't regain the control. And it's so scary, like the stories I hear. And when I look back to when I first competed, I actually went the other way and just tried to hang on to stage lean every single season. Like it was bad. I didn't have a period for 6 years, even at the height of off season, because I'd just hang out in stage lean for far too long because I didn't want to let go of that. And now I try and, like, I'm still at that point where it's nice to see the lower scale way, and I still want to try and keep things in to keep it tidy, as it were, without blowing out too much. But for me, it's about restoring health and being able to have that zest of life back, because let's face it, at the end of a prep, okay, on show day, you know, you bring out the bag and you're loving it. And I saw you on stage. It was so cool to watch. But then the next day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, like, why do I feel like this? I've been able to do this for however long. And then when you look back at what goes into a prep, like this hardest prep that I've ever done, I look back and I think, how the hell did I even get through each day?
Yeah.
It's nuts. But focusing on your health and being able to push up, you know, everyone should push out of that stage lean condition really as soon as possible. But it is tough because clothes, you feel different, you look different, and it's like, so working with your coach, and I always say be really, really honest. Or if you can't be honest with your coach, then maybe looking at a different coach, or, you know, exploring that, because you need to be open and honest at all times for this sport, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree with all that. And I think, as you say, having a plan and, you know, being prepared, it's going to be hard. It's very easy to be prepared, but until you experience it, it's a very, very different, you know, because everyone wants to do a prep and you go, you know, this will be hard, but until you experience that, but without a doubt, like that, this side of it is so much more difficult. But even the point about even the clothes, it's like then maybe going out and, like, it sounds daft, but like going out and buying clothes that fit you, that make you, you know, you feel good in. Like there, it's all really important to actually then, you know, making sure you're staying on top of your haircuts, your beard's done. I found that even to that point to really actually help during this time, because people will be very quick to tell you, people that don't really know what they're talking about as well, that well, you put some weight back on, or your face is blowing out a little bit. You're like, oh, give me a break. I've spent
He's like, I don't want the hamster cheeks back. Please go away. But it is like it is that sort of body dysmorphic state. Like, I'm lucky because my boyfriend, he hasn't competed before, but he's done a really hard diet for a photo shoot. He's been into bodybuilding for like 10 plus years. So he gets it, but he has to, well, he doesn't have to, but he wants to help me try and give that reality check, because you just get so in your own mind. You're thinking, right, okay, so, you know, if you have some off-plan days after your show or whatever, and then you're thinking, right, how can I rein that back in to get my weight back down? But actually, you should be, in essence, embracing the weight going up and being able to include foods. You know, it's something I talk about on my pod, about enjoying experience with family, friends, being able to enjoy palate experiences, but also it then feeds into, off the back of a show, the ghrelin effect, your hormones, and you can eat a lot more, I find.
Yeah. Like there's no filling you.
Yeah. It's like satiation is not a thing. Like, you feel like you're never going to be satiated again, but it's almost riding that period out a little bit.
Do you have a sort of plan with it yourself and with clients and going, right, this is where maybe I would expect us to be in terms of, say, above stage weight, or, you know, a kind of along them lines, more of like actually a target there that you work with them to go, I don't really want above you that, but at that point, by this point, or is it a little bit more flexible at that
time? Flexible to a certain degree. I know from my own experience, last off season, so before I went into this prep, it's the first time I pushed up pretty quickly and didn't want to hang out at that stage lean point. It was the first time I thought, do you know what, I'm going to see if I do this. And I knew I was going down the assisted route. You know, I wanted to get my bloods done, I wanted to get healthy as quick as possible, and I also knew it was a fairly short off season. So I thought, right, let's put on 5 kilos, not straight away, but, you know, in the first, say, month. And my menstrual cycle came back, I felt better, and it was like, the only thing I've done, and the only thing I can quantify it by, was pushing up so much quicker and not trying to keep restricting for such a long period of time. And that was a massive learning curve for myself, because I just thought, you know, that is the only quantifiable thing that I've changed. So I always have that in the back of my mind for myself. With clients, it is very individual, as you know, depending on male and female as well. But I always try and, you know, I would, after a show evening, I say, go out for a nice meal, you know, go out with the people you love. And then it's quite nice to have, you know, depending on the client, again, a couple of days where it's much more flexible, where you focus on keeping protein up, keeping some fruit and veggies, keeping hydration. Because of course, all of these things drop off. You think, I don't want to drink fluid, I just want to eat nice foods, I don't want to train, I don't want to pose. And then it's all of those variables that go into your prep, you're suddenly completely turning it around. And of course, then the weight gain can happen in potentially more of a negative way than trying to slowly, you know, bring it up and keep things controlled as much as possible.
I mean, I think you actually touched on a couple of great points there. Like, one being, like, especially again with clients, is the social aspect of going out and eating. I think that's important. I think that's something that, especially because you know what it's like when we're in this type, you're a robot, you're doing nothing. It's massively selfish. So allowing, like, okay, if it's social eating, I would say go out and socially eat, but I don't really want to see you sitting at 2 o'clock in the morning stuffing an Easter egg that you've kept for 6 months down you, because that doesn't contribute to anything. It's not contributing to anybody else's happiness. It's not contributing to your own. So I think that's one thing is, right, okay, you have a planned meal, go out and have the planned meal. And then I think the actual, again, it is client dependent. I have found that, but actually going, right, there's maybe we're within this time period, because we're control freaks too. Let's see if we can get to this weight. So, like, it's nearly a goal that we're going to get to this weight. We're not going to go over it, we're not going to go under it, but it's something that we have a little bit more autonomy and more control over, as especially for myself this year, going, right, I'm going to be 10% above stage weight in 4 weeks' time. And that was actually something I was like happy about, where in the past I've been like, oh shit.
Yeah, because we're so target driven, aren't we? And
yes,
when you get to your show and the goal's removed, if there's no plan of action or anything to then focus on, this can contribute heavily to feeling in this abyss, and also the thoughts and feelings that surround post-show anyway. It's like, well, how much weight can I gain? And then it's like, is that too much? Is that not enough? And again, I think that's down to the coaches to then give that information and give some ideas. Like you say, if we're aiming for roughly 10% above stage weight, for us being that type of personality, it gives us something to know that there's like a buffer, and you know, if it starts getting close to that, then maybe you can, you know, put things in place to keep it at that. You can hit a maintenance for a bit. You know, there's definitely periods where you could hit a bit of a maintenance after that initial gain in weight, and just restore, get your appetite, just give yourself, you know, especially if I've got all of next year. I'm not going to compete next year, so I've got that time to be able to have those periods where I can just relax at that point.
I mean, for sure, like having that as well, that secondary goal in mind that, okay, it might not be next year, but we're still working towards something that isn't just shit, we're done, that we're in the abyss now, that you know, and that we're going to have like 18 months to improve, but that health is like now the most important aspect. Otherwise, we're not gaining. It
Yeah.
kind of, if you don't want to touch on this, that's fine. But I think it's interesting because you brought it up and you are very open with stuff. Is talking about PED use. Like, what made you take that decision in that step? Because it is a very big step for everybody. But I think especially as a female, there's more taboo around it. Maybe not so much now because there is more education there. But what was kind of your driver towards that?
So initially, for me, like I say, getting into bodybuilding was that sort of control. And as I progressed naturally, I could see improvements happening, and definitely there was muscle gain happening. But it was always in the back of my mind to potentially go down the assisted route, because until a couple of seasons in, I didn't realize how heavily it was used in the bikini class, because I thought it was just that sort of stereotypical male and female bodybuilders. I never knew there was such thing as PED use in the realms of like bikini. So I was always intrigued by it, and I am like that. Like, I'm very open to anything. I'm like, well, I want to try it because I can be my own guinea pig. And then I got to know Joe Jeffrey, who I spent a lot of time with sort of end of last year, and we were talking about it more. And then it sort of spiked my intrigue even more. And I was like, oh, and he offered to help me going down this route. And I'm sure you know him, you know, he's very big in the realms of the PEDU side of things in the UK and bodybuilding, well, and across the globe as well. So that opportunity, I guess, swayed me even more. And then learning more about it, and that intrigue of how much more could I progress my physique, because it's used in the federations I compete with anyway. I've never competed with a natural fed, so it was like, I'm against assisted athletes anyway. Do I go down that route? And then my new coach, Tom, he's also part of the Physique Collective. He was obviously able to offer me guidance there. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to go for it and just see if I can improve my physique and how that would feel. And like, I still feel really excited by it, because bodybuilding for me as well, I quite like being the weird person. Like, none of my friends do it. Like, well, my old friendship group, I've gravitated more towards bodybuilders and people that get it now. But I've always wanted to be sort of away from the norm, and this almost gave me that reason. And then being assisted as well, it just adds a little bit more substance to my own journey, and I guess like a level up. I'm not saying that everyone should do this, because I, as you know, on my pod, I always say to people, see what you can do naturally before you even consider PEDs, because, you know, it is a big decision, like you say, to once you do that, you can't go back to being natural, and you can't compete with those federations again. So there's lots of considerations, but I'm glad I've gone down this route, because it's just been super cool to just see the difference.
I mean, we're competitive beings. We always want that challenge. We want to see what more we can get. And the thing is, you trained and competed for like 7 years prior to even, you know, going down that route. So there's so much you can do naturally before it. And like myself, I also took that decision a couple of years back, and at no point can I be honest and say that I regretted it. Now, it's not me saying take it, it's brilliant stuff.
No, again, yeah.
It is your own choice, but I think like you done is that you literally got one of the best people in the country to help guide you on that journey, and it is so important if it is your first time doing it, just to reframe that as like, go to somebody that knows what they're talking about, not some guy in the gym that doesn't have any just of work or anything like that. So no, I think like, especially within the categories you're competing, it's so much more prevalent than, like, I think within bodybuilding we know, but I think in the outside community it's easy to judge, but we are outliers.
Yeah, I know.
Thrive off of it.
I've always found, though, I don't know about yourself, but you know, female bodybuilding for me, like, that is really, it's something that I'm like, wow, you know, how far you can take it if you want to. And although I'm going to stick to bikini, you know, I'm still fascinated what you can do with going down the assisted route and how much people put into that and are willing to take it. Like, it's fascinating what you can do with the human body.
This is slightly off. Well, it is on topic, but I'm not sure if you've seen it. There's a program on Amazon Prime about female bodybuilding, and if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. It gave me a new appreciation of it, because I'll be honest, on the outlook, I was kind of like, well, what is this we're watching here? But actually, after watching it, I was like, this is actually it's a new form of femininity, and it's nearly taking that control and not being led by a man per se, getting on the feminist bandwagon. But it's really interesting. So I'd highly recommend you watch it. It's a gasp athlete. I can't remember the girl's name. She's a Russian girl, but it was honestly excellent. So yeah, completely off topic, but I'd highly recommend you watch it. Got a few questions in, Sarah. Quite a few actually, but there's one I want to touch on, and it's kind of, obviously this girl's maybe having issues with bodybuilding and relationships, but that's kind of it. It's managing, I suppose, like having successful relationships and bodybuilding, especially in prep, but I think just throughout it, because we still want that control, and it is still a large part of our lives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, part of the reason for getting divorced last year was realizing that my husband and I were completely different people. He wasn't into the gym. If he ever came to the gym, he'd come with me to pacify me, but it would be so unpleasant that I ended up, on the way home, I'd be like, why do you need to act like that? Why do you need to be like this? And it ended up, it was so separate, and I found it made me even more internalized and even more like institutionalized every time I prepped. And I'd crave prep because for me, like, what goes into a prep every day, like, I could funnel all this energy into it and not have to speak to many people. And being unhappy at home, then it can go into other relationships as well, because you're just not feeling in a good place. Whereas when I came away from that, and then being with Matt now, like, because he understands it, we are very, very similar in regards to how we treat bodybuilding. So like, we've both done it for so many years now that we're at that point where it doesn't need to be neurotic, although you need to get everything done. Whereas when you first start out, it can completely overtake you. So in this relationship, it's been super, super cool. Like, it's been my best prep in that regard, although it was my hardest. Whereas being with someone that's completely opposite, I'd almost say to people, come away from that, but I don't want to start saying that you shouldn't be with someone, because it could balance out, I guess, but for me, it's made a night and day difference to how I treat bodybuilding, being with someone that's on the same page as me.
Does it in some ways balance you a little bit as well, by having somebody that can maybe like call you on stuff that, here, you're going neurotic again? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because again, like things like scale weight, we touched on that earlier, but it does, although it's only one thing that we're monitoring, there's checking photos, there's so many other things, all of the data you have, I don't know if it's more female based, but females I work with do tend to get more hung up on scale weight. But, if it would go up slightly and he could see in my check-in photos, he'd look at them and go, well, you're holding a bit of water because you did 15,000 steps, an hour cardio and train legs. And I'm like, but the weight hasn't gone down. So it definitely offers this voice of reason. And I guess because we're so respectful of each other, there's no ego, and it's, super, super cool. Because I just go, okay, well, he knows what he's talking about. Coupled with what my coach says, I need to have a reality check here. But I can see how it could potentially add to, if you are competitive against each other, and if there's ego, it could end up being very, very tricky.
One person wants to take the lead on. I mean, I feel like just in general, it's very important to have supportive environments, whether that be friendships, even the gym you're in to some degree, but especially somebody that you live with, you're supposed to love. Like there has to be a level of support there. And yes, sometimes you have to potentially check yourself and go, is this one on me? But at the same time, if you're loving what you're doing and it is bringing you genuine happiness, then there has to be support on both sides. I got married there in the summer during my prep. Actually, it was initially a 4-week diet, a holiday diet. Then I was like, here, I'm getting pretty shredded here. So I decided to get on. But like, to have that level of support to go, yeah, okay, diet through the Ibiza if you want to, as long as you make sure you show up for the wedding, then I'm good with it. So it is so support, because even in a general like lifestyle and fat loss clients, like it's one of the main like things that break down anybody's success, is having somebody there that's not supportive. They're going, just have the chocolate, come on out for a drink, and there's nearly that level of pressure, even though it isn't fulfilling their own happiness.
Yeah, for sure. And I speak with so many people, you know, especially on show day when you're sort of having your hair and makeup done and stuff, and there's other competitors there, like you can hear what people are talking about. And people, you know, distance themselves heavily from their other half. You know, their other half still sitting there eating a takeaway pizza and they've got a chicken salad. And they're not at a point where they can deal with that. You know, I'm fine with it. You're probably fine with it. You know, Matt sits there and eats 4,500 calories when I'm on 1,000.
Yeah.
I don't ever look at him and go, why the fuck are you doing that? Because we're both bodybuilding and we're both on different routes. But if you're a first timer, or even the first few seasons, like the food focus goes through the roof. And it's really hard if your partner's doing things like that, because you then start getting food focus amplified when it's already there.
Did you ever find that there was a level of like apathy towards what you were doing? Like, was it a self-conscious thing on the other side when you were in relationships that, you know, you were doing these sort of things and it was aspirational to some degree, or you were starting to look quote unquote better? You know, did you ever feel that was something that cropped up? Because something I see a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Now you say that. There was periods of time through my marriage where, like, I used to say he was a feeder, because it would almost be like he was trying to get me to not look as good in a sense. And, you know, whether or not that's the case, but every time I prepped, every time I wanted to improve my physique, I always think that I want to look better for my partner, you know.
Yeah.
But, and I'm a loyal person, you know, it's not, I wouldn't be going to the gym and, you know, flexing it and trying to get attention from other people, but it can be taken in the wrong way. Like, you know, if you are looking better, it could sow that seed, I guess.
Yeah, especially because your confidence is usually just that little bit higher too. But it's definitely some of the biggest issues I've seen with just general clients that happening. We'll go
This
in
is why I love coaching couples.
together. Do you? How have you found that?
I love it. Like, it's so cool because they end up empowering each other.
No, my experience is like away from online on a one-to-one experience when the
Oh
fella
God.
that I've got, so I've had one like a few where the girlfriend's like, "Can I bring my boyfriend?" I don't know. I was like, "Okay, I've had this before," and then the girl's potentially stronger. The guy it never ended well. It just never ended well. She's loving it. He was hating it. But I'm glad it went well for you because it didn't go well for me. It's the longest hour of my life. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned from bodybuilding?
That you've got to do it for you, because it's a subjective sport. And I always try and bring this up as much as possible. What you've done in a prep and what you've done in an off season, whatever phase you're in, to get to stage and to complete a prep, you know, and having the off seasons around that to improve, if you're doing this multiple times, there's a lot that goes into this every single day. You know, for the last 7 months, I have tracked every single thing I've consumed. I've hit the training plan. I've done everything. And then to get on stage and come fourth could have easily been like, well, I haven't done well enough. And you can go into that, you know, really regretful step. What should I have done? Could I have done better? But I've found that realizing I'm doing it for myself, and that the judges maybe aren't then just not looking for me on that day, then enjoy the competition. And it is what it is. You know, you can't change what the judge's decision is. And I know from judging myself, you know, when it gets to that point where you've got X amount of bikini athletes that are all in your top 5, it's very small things that then pick apart the winner. So you never know. It could be a point in it. It could be 10 points in it.
I mean, the thing is, as you say, Sarah, like this year was very much about you going from, I don't want to say lower tier shows, but you know what I mean, and then moving up to Two Bros that is seen as the highest level in the country. If you want to be an IFBB pro, that's the route you go. So, you know, knowing that you take that step up, you were still very competitive, and then now you're going, right, I'm doing this for me, but I've got 18 months or whatever it is to improve again. It's just another step up the ladder, and I think a lot of people want it now, but like bodybuilding is a long game, you know. And for myself this year, that was the same thing. Went men's physique at Two Bros, thought, right, I need to be better. I want to do bodybuilding, forget this men's physique stuff, move up to lower tier shows, and then now go, where do you stand next time? And that's probably another 5-6 years. And that's why you have to love it, or else it's just a drain on you.
Yeah, it's the journey. Like, I had a guy on the pod this week, and it was super cool because he gave the analogy of people aim for the big diamond at the end of the path, but they don't remember all the little diamonds. And if you were to add up all the little diamonds, they'd equate to the big diamond at the end. So if you get that big diamond at the end, as well as all the little diamonds, then okay. If you pick up all the little ones and then you don't get the big diamond, you've still got the same amount of awards, the lessons, everything you can learn from bodybuilding, like the life lessons in itself go across the whole of your life. It's not just bodybuilding. Things like time management, all of these things help you evolve as a person.
That's it. The confidence, the self-mastery that you take from that should, if you let it transcend to other areas of your life, I think it really can do. Like, I know when you come out of a prep, once you kind of get through that foggy stage, you've got this new lease of life and this new perspective. You just live monk life existence. You've that many you're just like, go, I can take the world on.
I'm always like, fucking hell, I did feel like shit, didn't I?
And at that 6 week time, you go, whoa, how did I'm sitting eating 4,500 calories going, I'm hungry. And you're like, check yourself. You were eating nothing before.
I know, like it is, for me, it's about 6 to 8 weeks. I suddenly go, fuck, like you can sleep again. And all these, like for this prep, every day I had to do 8,000 fasted steps with a black coffee. And I think I could not think of anything fucking worse than doing that again. God, it's like, I just can't do it. But obviously that all goes into the assisted route and using stims and various other compounds, you know, but I'm just like, how the hell did I do that?
Sarah, listen, I gotta wrap this up, but I really appreciate you coming on. But I think most of all, I admire like your honesty, and that's why I would push people to go on and actually listen to your Beyond Condition podcast. There's like, I don't know how many episodes there is, but there's a lot, and there's a lot to be taken from it. Just the honesty of it, obviously your experience in 9 years in it, it's something you need to go and listen to if you're competing, and especially if you're female competing as well. So no, I really appreciate it. I would love to have you on again at some point, because I could have went through loads. Where can people find you?
So Instagram's the best place, at Sarah Parker _BB, of course. When I redid my Instagram, it was like, what should I do it as? So yeah, I'm open to, you know, I get people DM me off the back of my pod and other pods that I've been on. So I love speaking with people. And if anyone wants to sort of touch on anything we've spoken about, my inbox is open.
So go check Sarah out. And anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Do the usual, the subscribe, like, share, and that, right? That's what they say here. So thank you for on, and we'll get you on again at some point, Sarah.